Hello, FAST families, and welcome to Homeschooling During COVID. My name is Virginia Spencer, and I'm here today to talk to you about how you can create a learning environment at home for your child. A little bit about me. I'm the IEP liaison for FAST. I'm also a special education advocate, and I'm also a parent coach for behavior training. So in case you hadn't heard about the liaison program, I'm here to help you if you have a child that's transitioning into the public school system in preschool. I'm here to help you with a toolkit and just to be fully informed and aware of your rights as you go in through the process of having your child evaluated, but also coming up with an appropriate program. I'm also a special education advocate, so I'm a non-attorney legal representative for parents in Texas. And as such, I go to disputes, I go to IEP meetings, and I basically try and secure the most appropriate services that a child needs. As a parent coach, I coach children from the ages of 2 through 11, specifically with ADHD. And basically, I coach their parents through a training program so that they can control and also help their child with executive functioning deficits. So some of you may have pulled your children out of the school district that you're in because of virtual instruction challenges. Virtual instruction obviously has some drawbacks to it, and some of those can be that you were thinking about putting your child in the school system, or they are in the school system, and they're not responding well to any of the synchronous learning, which is the real-time teacher interaction over the internet. A lot of children struggle with privacy concerns. I've heard of children shutting down their actual video connection. Some people have been bumped off, especially when parents are there. They have to try and facilitate their children getting back into a virtual classroom. And then there's also been issues with screen fatigue. So it's hard for even adults to sit on a computer all day and listen to somebody talk and maybe communicate with them back through the computer. And for our children, it's really, really very hard when that computer screen time isn't interspersed with some hands-on learning. So these are some of the issues that the districts have been having. They've also been trying to use, and there's been an emphasis on asynchronous learning, which is where they record videos. They use platforms like Google Classroom to actually engage a parent and the child in answering questions, participating in online activities. And of course, a lot of children with executive functioning issues have trouble visually navigating those platforms. So what choices do you have if you are in the school district and you want to start teaching your child at home? So there's a couple of scenarios here. If you're a parent of a child that has an IEP, you can ask the IEP team if homebound services would be an appropriate placement. And what that means is your child receives instruction and they are at home. The difference between that and actually withdrawing your child is you still have the IEP. They're still trying to give you services, whether they're virtual or not. Some homebound teachers are actually visiting the home and facilitating learning with the parent at home. Now, if you haven't placed your child in the school system and they don't have an IEP yet, you can ask them to do an evaluation. In fact, they are responsible for providing and conducting an evaluation for IDEA. And so if they decide that your child is eligible for some services that they provide to private school children, these services are typically called proportionate share services. And those are whatever they have decided to provide to all privately placed children in that school year. So it's not like having individualized services. They're actually going to tell you we have OT available, we have speech therapy available. That's what's available to your child. If your child has never been in the school system or you just would want to withdraw them, you can get the proportionate share services if you want them. If you don't, you're still probably going to be engaging in some private providers and getting related services at home. So those are some of the options. So here are some general considerations for homeschooling. First of all, you want to create an environment that is a good place for your child to learn. So one of the key things when you're creating this environment is to make sure that it's free from distractions. So you can block distractions with any kind of a barrier. If you have something at home you can use, it could be a cardboard box that you've cut out, but something that keeps your child focused on whatever the activity is. You also want to make sure that that space is organized. And so you're keeping everything accessible, immediately accessible to you for your child and also to your child. So if you're storing some jewelry, for example, some sensory aids, you would keep them in a separate bin. So definitely organize the designated space with the things that you need to facilitate learning. Here's another critical consideration. When you're actually homeschooling, you need to make sure you have some kind of curriculum. And the reason for this is schools will want to know what you're doing. And in some states, there's a legal requirement for school districts to substantiate that your homeschool program is legal and it meets the requirements for homeschool. One way you can make sure of this is by contacting your state's homeschool coalition. There are entities in each community that can help you with homeschooling requirements. So it's important to have scope and sequence to explain how you're going to provide related services so that they know that you are offering something that's comparable to the public school system. Make sure that you can facilitate that learning by creating a schedule. I'm going to provide a handout for a very simple daily schedule. It's important to incorporate everything that your child needs on a daily basis, including breaks, including unstructured time, and including activities that create some variety during the day to keep your child engaged in the learning process. So I talked about scope and sequence. Scope is basically what are the learning objectives for your curriculum. The sequence is how do those activities build on each other to reach the learning objectives. So usually in a school environment, there will be a focus on academic and functional performance. So make sure you review your state's learning objectives and the curriculum standards. In some states, that would be their own curriculum. In Texas, that would be the Texas, essential knowledge and skills. And in other states, it might be the core curriculum. So you're going to build your curriculum based on that. And there are lots of private providers and tutors that can help with devising programs. You can consult with some educational consultants and make sure that what you're doing is aligned with these objectives. So total communication will most likely require assistive technology training from a speech language pathologist. And when I mean training, I mean for the parent, but also for the child to make sure that they can actually access that technology. And this is one of the key considerations for most children with Angelman syndrome. And so in the rest of my presentation, I've tried to address it from a general perspective. And of course, you will tailor a lot of the content to your own child's needs. Get your doctor involved, your child specialists and neurologists. They're going to drive a lot of the health considerations that you might put into a schedule for your child. And you will also need some considerations for behavior interventions if your child has behavioral issues. So very important, you need to meet your child at their level. So one of the things that you don't want to do is to set objectives that are extremely difficult to attain. It was very discouraging to your child. You want to go through his or her pace. And don't forget to plan breaks in the daily schedule. Chunk information if necessary. Your child may be able to sense family stress from COVID. There's been a job loss, or you're struggling with maintaining your own mental health. Your children often pick up on those cues. So definitely adjust pace according to where you're at, and any other ways you've been adversely affected by COVID-19. Keep running records on what your child can do and show approval for a process that results in outcomes. So what I mean by that is if your child is working through something that results in growth or progress, you want to show approval as you go along, but don't give meaningless praise. You definitely want it attached to things that will help them learn. So communication. So my thumbnail is in the way, so I'll just move that. So augmentative and alternative communication devices are key when your child is having trouble communicating with you, and instruction. And always communication is key to learning and communicating expressively and receptively. So some of the communication devices that you may want training on are Proloquo Go. There are pragmatic organization dynamic display books, which are used in the US school system. These are available privately, not just through schools. And they can facilitate communication. And pod books can be customized to represent common phrases. You can take photos of yourself, so you're not having to, the photo that is associated with the word mom or dad is not a random person. It could be a picture of you and your spouse. So as far as caregivers, those are things that you should probably incorporate into a pod book. And then there's your standard speech language therapy. So you're going to most likely have a private speech language therapist, and they're going to be the architect of most of this communication, in addition to working on sounds and articulation, if those are something that your child has emerging skills in. So communication is very important, and it's the basis of learning to read. And the old saying is, you learn to read to learn, and that's true. And so there are some programs out there that can facilitate literacy development. So first of all, make it multisensory. Read to your child, use audio books. You can manipulate letters on a board. They can be tactile manipulatives, and you can use aids as well. Maybe a computer program if your child wants to be engaged in the computer. There's a protocol called the Bridge, which I'm going to share with you, which can be used to determine pre-literacy skills on a rubric. And so you're measuring progress on a rubric. And this is something that speech pathologists are often aware of. Phonemic awareness. So phonemes are units of sound. And this phonemic awareness has been found in the last couple of years to be critical to developing reading skills. The way the brain works is that you identify the sound to the letter, and then you learn to manipulate and delete phonemes, units of sound. And once you're automatic in that skill, you actually start to develop a visual ability to retrieve words. And so this is why some of the programs that focus on whole word instruction have been discounted and debunked by the scientific community. So literacy needs to be structured. And I mentioned some structure right there, which is your child has to learn how to rhyme words. Reading strands should be combined on letter sound knowledge and phoneme awareness. And that's where it needs to be automatic. So while you're working on those things in the academic areas, and you may hire someone to help you with this, dyslexia therapists can help with this, and they're trained in these structured literacy methodologies. You can also create activities that involve vocabulary. So taking a picture of your child engaged in activities connects them to a word. So behavior is a form of communication. And this is one of the main areas of focus. So I'm covering it today. The key thing with behavior is to determine its function. So the function of behavior is, what is a child trying to communicate through their behavior? So here are some statistics, and these are from the British Angelman Syndrome Society. Individuals in general, not just children, struggle with aggressive behaviors. A high number, 7 out of 10 individuals, and 4 out of 10 struggle with self-injurious behaviors. So I've broken them down into 2 categories. And the first one is physical behaviors like self-harming, biting and kicking, and then ongoing behaviors that are not physical. So refusals, obsessions, and stubbornness. So when your children just won't get involved in an activity. So those are also behaviors that impede learning. So when new communication strategies are introduced, and you may work with your child's psychologist on introducing strategies that will benefit your child that they can learn, or you may work with a certified behavior analyst. But usually when new communication strategies are introduced, behaviors may get worse before they get better. And that is normal. It takes time for children to learn replacement behaviors. Replacement behavior means a desired behavior that's taught to replace the behavior that is undesirable. So these should always be taught before ignoring challenging behaviors. You should never ignore them if you don't know how to teach the behavior that is replacing it. So always include your child's psychologist in any conversation about behavior interventions. So assess the environment for external causes. And what I mean by that is some things you can control about behavior are basically the environment itself can be a trigger. It can cause behaviors. So just assess the learning environment, see if there's something in there that is consistently causing issues with your child and they seem to be unhappy about something. Maybe it's a toy that is out of reach. Maybe it's external noise. Maybe it's a sibling that is interrupting. Those are things that you may be able to control. So you can definitely take data on this just before the behavior occurs. Get a sheet of paper, write down how many times it's happening and see if you can determine a pattern. So if there's something about the learning environment that can be changed, you can change it. So the other consideration with homes with that schedule is you need to consider motor skills, because a lot of children with Angelman syndrome are mobile to some extent. Obviously, there are large variations in mobility skills, but oftentimes they may not be at a point of independence. So younger children are going to need supervision, and definitely this is going to be driven by your occupational therapist or your physical therapist. So if they have written a goal, and they do write goals, like the school does, if they write goals that support independent skills in a year, then make sure you're scaffolding your expectations for acquisition of strength. For example, skills where your child is going up and down the stairs unassisted, or using assistive technology for their gait, or trying to stand up on their own without leaning on something. So those are some areas that you're definitely going to need the guidance of your private occupational therapist or physical therapist. Create your own goals of progress in collaboration with their help. You maybe just be able to adopt goals that they're working on, and just make sure that you're implementing any strategies that they teach you with fidelity. And any questions you can ask them, but definitely let the professionals drive skill development in this area. And assess the environment for safety. If your child does fall, are they going to be falling on a soft surface? You know, what is the environment that facilitates working on motor skills if there is a risk of falling? So comfort levels. Some children with Angelman syndrome have trouble with food. They have some pain, and they also have epilepsy. So what I would recommend to you is that your child's neurologist definitely get a letter that makes recommendations for your purposes, and your child's doctor. And these people need to monitor treatment of any health condition. And so what you might need to know is the medication, when to look out for medication that is having, where your child's having an adverse reaction or where it's not working. For example, if your child has seizures, and there's been an increase in seizures, you definitely need to go back to find out what is happening and how to address this in your home learning environment. This may include stimulation implants or specific diets, ketogenic foods to control some of this. So these are all things that are driven by, again, the experts, and that you should incorporate into that schedule. So if you need to have a break to administer medicine or lunch, all of these things are going to be in your schedule. And they're all going to provide an environment that is conducive to learning. Your child's occupational therapist can also create a sensory diet. And when I talk about a sensory diet, it's actually sensory activities that address different areas of input. So, one of the things that can be done for a sensory diet is creating a space where your child can go on a swing for vestibular input, where they can play with something that is safe, and where they're probably not going to try and eat it all the time, but Play-Doh is a good tactile part of a sensory diet. And also pushing activities, so pushing a tricycle, sitting on something that creates some imbalance if it's safe. Those are sensory, that would compose a sensory diet. So ask your OT about that. So another important consideration is parent. So parents need self-care. And this is especially important when you have a pretty intensive schedule. Maybe you have virtual therapies happening, or you have someone coming into the house, depending on what you're going to allow in this difficult time. So you need to schedule breaks for yourself. And this obviously is going to include a partner or a friend. They're probably going to need to take over for you. So you need to make sure that they're trained in all of the methods that you're using. So share the schedule with them and make sure that they understand what their responsibilities are. So one of the things to think about when you're overwhelmed is think about priorities. Prioritize what is important. Ask yourself these three questions. Does this have to be done to meet my child's best interests? So how important is it? Is it urgent? Is it something that has to happen immediately? And does my child have to do it now? Is it important to my child? Is it important for them to do it? Or is it just important for me to have them do it? So try and think about these questions when you're feeling frustrated. If you find yourself struggling to prioritize, consider family counseling. It's always useful to include all of your family in this process. One of the things that I've learned from coaching children with executive functioning issues is that most children with delays have executive functioning issues, and they live in the now. So they're unable to defer what they want to a later time. So you can use strategies like the PREMAC principle. First, we're going to do this, then we're going to do that. You're going to explain the routine to your child, and you're going to make it consistent and predictable. So children in general look to us for predictability and making sense of the world. So you need to be consistent and make sure that you're not deviating from your routine. So that's very important. So one of the things that is currently extremely popular, there aren't a tremendous amount of studies about mindfulness. This is usually incorporated into situations with children that struggle with anxiety, that have ADHD again. The reason I'm bringing it up in this presentation is you can incorporate mindfulness into your self-care. And this allows you to be really aware of successes in the moment and not stressing about things that are not within your control. So you need to be your child's best model and teacher. And this means practicing and modeling behavior that you want your child to demonstrate as well, but also that awareness of things that are happening in the minute. So if you see your child is in distress for some reason, instead of saying, can we just get through this and then you can actually say, what is it that's bothering you? What can we do about that right now? So definitely incorporate mindfulness into your self-care, and those breaks in your schedule. It'll help you manage your stress. Seek social support. There's a lot of social support groups. FAST is a good place to obviously get supports. You can get supports from other moms. There are lots of groups where parents share their challenges and their wisdom. So I'd recommend going on Facebook, look at hashtags on Instagram as well. Sometimes there are posts that can be really inspiring. And again, it's all about building that support system while you're at home being the primary caregiver and teacher. So that essentially is the end of my presentation. I'm going to be providing some handouts as well as this presentation, and I'm going to be providing the Bridges rubric for you. Please contact me with any questions about this presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to meeting everybody in the chat after the presentation. Thank you.